Well, welcome. I'm Jodie, and I'm the CEO of Springwater Township Public Library. And I have two very special guests with us today. Brian Adduono, who is a resident of Oromodante Springwater and is our defender for our Georgian Bay Reads program coming up in October. And he chose the book Estates Large and Small by Ray Robertson. And I'm very happy to have Ray Robertson here on the call with us so he can talk about this book with Brian. So, Brian, over to you.
Okay. Hi, once again, Ray.
Hey, Brian.
So Estates Large and Small. I absolutely loved it, Ray. I've read probably everything you've written, but
Wow.
dare I say, in the fiction world, this might be a culmination, this novel. This has got every little bit of Ray Robertson in it. And so where I want to start, though, maybe for our purposes for Georgian Bay Reads and for this interview, everybody likes a novel about books.
Right.
Book clubs really love novels about books.
Right.
And so this one seems to be, it's got a bookseller. It's got plenty of quotes from books, titles of books.
Yeah.
So my first question to you might be just something simple about commenting on the role of books in a person's life, maybe the role of books in building community.
Yeah.
And then lastly, my goodness, the future of the role of books, and especially paper books. So I'll let you go with that one first.
We'll get to that one last because it's the saddest tale of all.
Yeah, it might be.
I mean, that's one of the things that I think Estates Large and Small was about. And I appreciate your kind words, and I don't entirely disagree in the sense that there's a lot of different things that are important to me are in that book. But I really, with this book, really felt like it was time to talk about, like you said, the role of books in our lives and the diminishing place and what they've been replaced with, and how, word du jour is systemic. It's almost like we were talking before that we went on live with this, was about how quickly things become normal is just something that seems to be this week's edition, and I think the character in my book feels a bit. He sort of got busy with some personal things, having some problems keeping his bookstore afloat and some relationship problems. And you just sort of look up one day and see that. I remember when I used to, when you take the subway or a streetcar, if someone was reading like a really lousy book, you kind of like look down your nose at them. Now, if I get on a streetcar or subway and anyone's reading a book, I think, look, they're reading a book. It doesn't matter what it is, the standards have changed entirely.
Yeah.
I think that reading. This really actually came home to me when I was doing the audiobook for this, because usually other people read them, and I thought, oh, I'll take a shot at this, and I was terrible at it. But even when it was all done, I didn't realize, but it became clear to me how much the actual process of reading and pausing and reflecting and closing the book and looking out the window and coming back to it is different from just information or language being shoveled at you, even if it's done well, and there's so little in our lives anymore, it seems that it's legitimate to pause and to not even contemplate, just pause and let things happen. Which means that we're incredibly productive, we get lots done, there's easy to share information. But I just feel that there's a hollowness in my life when I'm not connected to words. Taking a journey with a character who sort of allows you to slow down and look at obviously their life, but if it's a good book, hopefully it's about your own life. Every book has its own unique characters. That's part of the fun. This guy is a pretty unique guy. He's decided to teach himself history of Western philosophy, and he's into the Grateful Dead and smokes too much dope and all this stuff. But really, I think there's a commonness to this book with any reader. I think it's about the place of words in our lives and the diminishing place, as you point out.
Yeah.
Phil has to close his store because some multinational company in Toronto can pay more rent to sell.
Yeah. Let's dig a little deeper into Estates Large and Small. I mean, it's a book about books, but really, if we're looking at ideas and themes, the overarching theme for me might be change and transition. Almost all of the characters are in some kind of transitional state, and especially Phil. The setting go from brick and mortar to virtual. We have cultural changes, individual changes, relationship changes. So
health changes.
Maybe
we don't want to give too much away, but
Well, I guess spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But maybe you can talk about change as an overarching theme, and also perhaps coping with change or avoiding change. Running and hiding with the headphones on.
That is one way of coping. That's right.
Yeah, the
So I got the right
self-medicating
Yeah,
headphone
yeah,
route.
yeah. And I think that's the interesting thing with fiction is that I think Phil is essentially a good, happy guy, but there's something not quite working in his life anymore. And that happens to us. And I think it's harder when you get older to sort of see that because you just become so routinized and it's your life. So it seems so normal. That's the one thing about vacations or stepping outside of your life. So I think it's an interesting point in his life. His store is closed. He's had to go online, which he's not comfortable with. He's not real happy about that, but he wants to work with books. He loves books. He just loves being around books, the smell of books. So that's his new life. He's recently gotten not semi-recently, out of a relationship that wasn't particularly fulfilling. So that process of change is really interesting in terms of a novel because you have those kind of conflicts that are built in. And I really think that's one of the things the book's about. I think you nailed it in a sense, is the impermanence of life.
Mm-hmm.
Even books, he talks about at one point in the book about finding some of his books at a bookstore or a used book sale, and how the books are even recycled. The people die, and the
Yeah,
books keep going on. So in a strange way, this very antiquated thing, the book that we have that is sort of on the margins of contemporary culture, is this thing that lasts when these other people are gone. And I'm a
right.
big
Well,
believer in that. I mean, I'm a big believer that I can open up Virginia Woolf's essays today. Well, I won't today, but I could. And I would be transported to 80 years ago. And her voice, her personality, her reality would be more real to me than the exchange I had at Loblaws 45 minutes ago buying some bread.
yeah,
And that to me is about as close to the miraculous as I can get, in the sense that everything's impermanent. People die, relationships end. That bookstore that was always there is now a gap. But there's
right.
something about this real antiquated form that we all kind of, feel nostalgic about, that endures. Yeah, it's
It
nice to
almost
see
brings
it.
us to the title, Estates Large and Small. I really loved
Yeah,
where you said that the collection that you're looking at various times throughout the book, going to look
yeah,
at someone's collection after
right.
someone's passed away, was like a museum to their life. I
Yeah,
thought that was a beautiful image, a beautiful
yeah, yeah.
symbol.
I don't think I stole it. I think I made that up. I think
Well, good. Yeah, I hope so.
I have a few friends who are booksellers, and it was listening kind of to their stories over the year. They'd come over and we sit down, and I'd say, "What's going on?" I said, "Oh, I just bought this. I just bought this estate or this collection," and it was always interesting. It's like, oh well, the husband or the wife had this little collection down in the basement that was very specific to their taste, very or music, and
Mhm.
he would
Yeah, it
go
could
in
be a
there after
record
after
collection. Yeah,
yeah, record collection after they were
yeah,
gone, and it was like you were buying their soul to a degree, the things that were most important to them, their music, their books, and curated by them,
yeah,
over a
yeah.
lifetime. Around the age you start feeling mortality, that's when you finally get a record collection or a book collection that kind of, this is kind of who I am, and so that's why I thought the book was, and the title of the book and this idea of him periodically going out to replenish his stock as a bookseller was again another example of the changingness of existence. But again, not a bad thing, because there's something wonderful to him as a bookseller to sell a book to somebody that really
Yeah.
wanted it or were looking for it.
Each
And I
new
know my
reader, eh?
yeah,
Perhaps.
my
Yeah,
friends who work in bookstores and retail, you're
yeah,
not just selling a cord for, an iPhone. Someone says, "Do you have that?" or "Can you get that?" And you get it for, and then they come back. My friend Randy, she said, "Boom, a store in Toronto." Once in a while, someone will come in and say, "Hey, about a year ago, you turned me on to this author," and I've gotten so into her book since then, or something. I mean, what
yeah.
a wonderful thing to
Aren't we
do.
glad that still happens, eh?
Yeah, and when it does,
Yeah,
I'm all for being cynical, but at the same time, if you calcify if you become calcified with cynicism, you don't see those nice moments of.
yeah,
And I do think that, even, yes, I agree that this is a time of decrease in reading and all that sort of stuff, but it's always been kind of one-on-one. I mean, they're always the big sellers, but I mean that's why it was so nice that this book was picked, because this wasn't the most recent book. That was a book a year before. And I got a new book out in November and then another one in February. And it was like, oh yeah, this book didn't entirely die.
yeah.
Brian read it and said, "Hey, that's a good book. Let's talk about it." And that was that's so rewarding that, again, sort of in the face of the ephemerality, our disposable culture, it's like, no, it's a few 3 years old, but it's not going to date.
Yeah.
Because
Well, Brian did read it actually more than once, and so
oh well,
dare I say, I'm going to give you this as a compliment. I don't know
okay.
how you're going to take it, but it's a darn literary novel as well. And so I
Well,
just want to bring up
that's
one scene, the scene where Phil meets Carolyn.
right.
Like if I were still teaching, I could probably spend a week or two just on that
Wow,
scene.
what a nice thing to say.
We've got the headscarf, the mask, cigarettes, recycling, their dialogue, mason jars, preserving, the knot, the mud room. I mean,
Right.
it's a microcosm of literary technique at its best there.
Gee, I had
Uh,
no idea. I'm flattered.
well, yeah, I wonder. I guess again, book clubs they love to know about
I've done a
an
couple of these.
author's
I've done a
method,
couple book clubs, yeah,
method and
with this
technique.
book.
So I'm going to frame it a little bit of a different way, though. I
Okay.
mean, do you pour over this is it agonizing, sentence by sentence, word by word, image by image, or are you at a point where some of this goodness it just comes out? This is just like a professional athlete going about their business in the game. They aren't thinking turn left,
Right.
right, they just do it. So maybe talk about technique or maybe that
Love
type
to.
of thing a little bit.
Well, it's exactly what you say because it's both of those things. I think it's the same for somebody who's just starting to write or someone. This is, my 16th book this November. You do write without any blind. Write with blinders on. I don't think about it. I think that was one of the problems. I studied philosophy at university, not literature, and I had a problem when I started writing was that I was thinking too much about the writing. I think that gets in the way. You do
Right.
just sort of write. That said, it's exactly what you said, and I don't find it painful at all. I find it quite, it's one of my favorite things to do in life. Life is the hard part. Writing makes sense a bit. Going to the dentist all week is the hard part.
Well, maybe especially the dentist.
Especially a dentist, but no, but that's that miraculous the thing where you write a draft and then you go back and you start doing that. Raymond Carver said somewhere that he didn't really like writing. He was kind of afraid of writing, the blank page. But there was nothing more he liked more than rewriting. And I
Right.
think that took me a long time to get there. And I think some of my earlier books probably would have been better if I had lingered over them longer. But that's just not who I was. You can't go back and say if I had done something. All I know is that by now when I finish a book, I know I'm not finished. I know that it needs to be not just sentence by sentence, which is like as you pointed out, is sort of that hallmark of enjoyment for me. The sentence by sentence. Not having studied literature at university, I was never taught how to appreciate a book, even though it was boring, or I sort of read
Right.
for interest. So I always felt as a reader, I need to be constantly fed something, given something. Even if it's just a sentence along the way. It's not like I'm waiting for a payoff or the big theme at the end. It should be a sort of heightened or enlightened hedonism reading. It shouldn't be
Right.
painful. And I liked it, and I just think that's a really important part of it. So when you get down to the end of the book, I think you are in that meticulous. Of course, by then you can't really see it anymore, right? You're so
Well, hopefully it's a little bit invisible. It's only, old retired English teachers like me that try to make it visible. Hopefully it's much more visceral and it's
yeah. Well,
emotional
you're
and so
right,
on.
right? And
Okay, we only have so much time,
yeah,
so I'll keep going with what I've got prepared here because it might be a decent segue. Part of the magic of this book for me was that although there are some heavy subjects in here, and although it's pretty obvious social criticism at times, there's a heck of a lot of humor going
good,
on in estates
wonderful,
large and small. I was laughing out loud.
good,
And sometimes it was humor right beside the heavy stuff or during the heavy stuff.
right.
And I guess, I'm a fan of that kind of humor. I think it's
Me too.
a nice way to break through. And so is that a personality thing on your part?
Well,
Did you give that to Phil so that we would have that comic relief if things got too heavy?
well, I think both of those things. I think hopefully it's in every book. I mean, this book about musicians is coming out. Hopefully it's a funny book because I just don't feel that you can deal with the tragic without the comic. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm very suspicious and skeptical about books that are solemn. They can't really be serious books, although they're pretending to be.
Right.
Because any kind of, I mean, anytime I've suffered trauma or something, you inevitably see a return to normalcy through humor. You joke
Yeah.
around about it.
Yeah.
I've got to go to my damn chemo appointment if I don't. It's like the
Yeah.
most dire, dark thing, but you use humor. And so for me, I don't know how you could write a book about a serious subject without humor. Now, sometimes it may veer off into the sardonic, like you were saying. He's sort of a crusty fellow in some ways, but hopefully, and hopefully the humor isn't like something that's sprinkled on, like here's some funny scenes, but like you were saying, it's just part of the fabric of life. So
Yeah.
I
It
tend to
seems
sort
like
of
an ongoing tone with Phil.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. An ongoing tone, right. And humor to me isn't something that you throw in to appease the reader. It's one of the ways that I survive life. And it doesn't have to be a big funny scene. It could be a very small little moment
Yeah.
and I found that those things can change your whole day or, even your whole life, those sort of moments. So I'm really glad that they're there because I want my books to be enjoyable and then maybe something else will happen. Maybe you'll be,
Okay.
you know, a month later be cutting the lawn and think, you know, whatever.
Yeah, we're getting close. So I'm going to throw a quote from
Ooh.
Estates Large and Small at you. I feel like every 2 pages, I probably could have
Oh,
highlighted a little
beautiful.
bit of a quote. Maybe I even actually did. Well, that'll come when I'm actually defending the book, perhaps in October. But this is a quote. Carolyn and Phil are talking about their philosophy, and one of them says, "He's the first one we've read who actually speaks directly to the reader. I want that in an author."
Yeah.
And so I'm going to end with that question, but I'm also going to ask you to maybe do what I have to do in October and tell us, why everyone should read Estates Large and Small, why it's worthy of our time, and maybe even in the paper or audio form.
Yeah.
I don't care how they get their
I
book.
prefer the paper because I read the audio. It's not that great,
Yeah.
believe me.
But doesn't matter to me how they get this
Right.
book into them, so to
Right.
speak. But yeah, the writer speaking directly to the reader. I got to say, I felt like I was being spoken to directly, maybe
Wonderful.
because I had a lot in common with Phil, maybe
Sure.
a lot in common with you. But that's a good book when it speaks directly to the reader.
Yeah. I need that. And I think that's Phil and Caroline, of course, are for different reasons are deciding to teach themselves a couple thousand years of Western philosophy. So they're dutifully doing their job. And then finally they come to a philosopher. I don't know if it was Nietzsche or whoever it was. And it was the same experience that I had at university was I was, that was the plan to go off and do graduate school. And then I started reading these people who actually sounded like they were speaking to me, although they'd been dead for 150 years and they never spoke
Mm,
English. And how does Emily Dickinson know this about me?
yeah,
You're reading
exactly.
you're reading these poems. It's like this woman who never left home, never did anything. How does she know these things? But she speaks that way, and I think that's the hardest thing to do. We've all read books that are good books, useful books, sometimes nonfiction. But I'll tell you the thing about the voice. There's a woman whose books biographies I've been reading, Claire Tomlinson. And I would never thought I'd read a biography of Hardy, Samuel Pepys. There's one of Dickens. Might have read the Dickens, but I read those books not because of the subjects, but because of the way she writes,
Mhm.
the way she tells a story. Because I've got biographies that are useful, but they're really not particularly. They're not engaging reads in the same way.
Yeah.
And it
With students, I always used to sort of think that they were, either non-reader, reluctant reader, until that book spoke to them, until they
right,
got the book that
right.
started to
That's
really,
so true.
yeah, really
That's
speak to
so
them, and
true.
then they would catch fire.
That's exactly, again, we're coming back to that hedonism level where it becomes this. Oh, reading is wonderful. It's good for you. It's all good for you, but you do it because you'd rather do it than something else. I mean, someone defined work as something you do when you'd rather be doing something else. Well, for many years of my life, there's nothing better uh, than just hiding from the world with a book, and just
Mhm.
being away and it's not so much gaining information, it's stopping the especially now, this constant flow of not even flow, jabbers of information and start and stop. And I think that's one of the things that really has to happen. It happened to me too when I was in high school. Didn't really care about books. So I was going to be a hockey player. And I
Yeah,
read Tennessee. We read Tennessee Williams in class, and I was like, wow. I something like Glass Menagerie, or maybe it
right.
was Return to Mazar, and um, I just didn't know that it could be enjoyable. I thought this was supposed to be good for you. I didn't know it was supposed to be enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, we both have TB, according to Estates Large and Small. We have true believer disease. I'll throw another quote about one of the estates, and you say about the person's estate, he made time to read, he didn't find time to read.
Right. Yeah.
And I really identified with that. I really like that. Okay, well, I'm going to turn. Should everyone read Estates Large and Small by Ray Robertson?
I think just because it's probably not like a lot of other books in Canadian literature, not in terms of its quality. I'm sure they're all fine books, but it's a sensibility that's not real. We were talking earlier about humor and about big ideas and sort of earthy details and things like that. And I just find that I find a lot of contemporary literature a little hands off, and I like to think that my books get into the messy stuff.
Yeah, well, it's very real, and I use that term.
That's like life, messy.
It's darn real, yeah, and I appreciated
which is why we need the humor, right, to get through the messiness,
yeah.
and maybe by the end have a clarified view of ourselves, and because I think a book should make you a better person, not in terms of like morality, but in terms of more alive, like more open to the good and the bad. I think we're constantly shutting down out of self-preservation. We all do it, especially when we get older.
Yeah, maybe makes us turn inward and outward both.
Exactly. Yeah, you turn inward so that therefore you can go, like we were saying earlier, those wonderful experiences. Yeah, there's a lot of horrible stuff, and you go, oh, what a wonderful encounter I had at the grocery store yesterday. The person was, and that you'll never see that person again. You can't be close to them. And I think sometimes that's one of the things that literature does, or art does, music, films, whatever. It sort of wakes us up a bit. Yeah. And it's good to be woken up because we do fall asleep, and that's just part of our nature. So I'd like to think that this book will keep you awake. How about that?
Okay, I like the answer. Well, it's not just the book that lasts forever. It's maybe the impact of the book that lasts forever, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. Like I don't know if I'll ever read Catcher in the Rye again, but I remember one of those books that spoke to the reader, right? Like, oh, this person's. I think I read it at the right age. I don't know if it'd be the right age now, but I'm not getting rid of that copy.
Yeah,
I've had it for 40.
I felt that about this book for me.
Really?
We're close in age, and the main character is close in age. But in some ways, I felt like I was being spoken to and awakened.
Yeah.
And definitely had a lingering impact. I mean, I read this when it came out, and here we are a couple of years later, and I am eager to defend it.
Wow.
At Georgian Bay Reads.
My ego is bursting. My ego, along with my teeth, because of my teeth problems, my ego is bursting. Because that's really what it is. I mean, I'm never going to be on a bestseller list or anything like that, but I like to think that maybe once in a while, somebody with a certain sensibility, shared sensibility, enjoys the book and maybe goes back to it or says, "Hey, check this sentence out." That was always the best, right? You be with your friend, you say, "Let check it. I'll read you this line or I'll read you this thing," because that's the DNA of the book is in the sentences, and so it always. Yeah. So to hear that is quite gratifying because it really is in the attachment to that one person,
Sometimes the farmer's market is better than Costco, huh?
Yeah, I may write that down. How we got on this topic, but anyway, yes.
Anyways, that reminds me, I would also like to do a shout out and a thank you to Biblioasis for providing the books for the library and all the defenders. So the 5 libraries and the 5 defenders. So we can have a really great discussion on it.
Right.
And so with that, we do need to bring it to a close, unfortunately, although I know we could talk for many, many hours about books and philosophy and everything else that we've been talking about. But Ray, thank you so much for coming here. We really appreciate you coming today. This will be posted later on this year prior to Georgian Bay Reads, so we can get some people hearing your thoughts about the book and then get them all to read it in the 5 libraries that are participating. Brian, thank you for being the whole cause of this by being Springwater's defender and choosing
my pleasure, not only today, but with this whole project. Yeah, it's been wonderful for me too.
I thank you so much. And Brian, it's been too long since we've talked. Come to town, we'll talk. And thanks for including me, Jodie. And I'll have my IT guy put the stuff up and promote it on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that.
Perfect.
Thank you. And I just want to say, for those watching, don't forget to come out to Georgian Bay Reads at the new Wasaga Beach Public Library on Saturday, October 25th at 7 o'clock.